voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
This morning, as lawmakers negotiate their next move, some businesses, well, they can't afford to wait. Bloomberg reporting that nearly 1/3 of U.S. restaurants could close permanently by the end of the year, hitting every state, every city, and every neighborhood. Zoom in on New York City, where more than 2,800 small businesses have already done so, with more than 80% of restaurants and bars not paying their full rent in the month of June. This comes along with a new plea from the Independent Restaurant Coalition urging Congress to pass the Restaurant Act, which would create a $120 billion grant to help keep independent restaurants alive. Joining us now to discuss, two individuals who have felt this impact firsthand and are trying to lead the effort to change things. Tom Colicchio, chef and owner of Crafted Hospitality and a founding member of the Independent Restaurant Coalition, and Gabriel Stuhlman, CEO of Happy Cooking Hospitality. Tom, you warned us of this 4 months ago, and PPP didn't serve the restaurant and bar industry, and here we are. Just personally, as the owner of 6 restaurants, how are you doing?
Well, not great. 2 of those restaurants are open. One has 17 seats out front, outside, and the other we're operating at half capacity indoors and with some additional seating outside. All in all, we're probably at about 17% of our business right now.
17? 17?
Yep, 17, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gabriel, when we spoke back in May when everything was shut down, you were worried. You own 9 restaurants in New York City. Where do you stand now?
For one, Stephanie, thank you for having me back on the program. It's good to be here with you. From when we last spoke, things were pretty horrible. Where they stand today is unfortunately not much better. We currently have 5 of our 9 restaurants barely operating. They are operating not much better than what Tom reported. We're looking at about 20% of the revenue that we used to make before. Aside from that, I would say the reality of that Bloomberg report that you just shared with everybody is 100% accurate. I think the probability of us likely permanently closing multiple restaurants in our company still remains extremely high.
Operating at 17 or 20%, you just can't afford to stay open. Tom, you believe the Restaurants Act could save thousands of independent restaurants. How?
Sure, it can. Well, it's $120 billion spread over all independent restaurants. Essentially, it's income replacement. It'll cover the period from February 15th to January 1, 2021. It'll enable us to pay not only staff, which PPP didn't rent, but also pay suppliers, also to pay for supplies to like PPE for the staff, any kind of structure that you need to build to make your restaurant safe. And so it's the best shot that we have at getting restaurants open. And I think the reports are correct. I mean, the James Beard Foundation did a survey where 85% of the respondents said they probably wouldn't reopen. And so we're looking at millions and millions of jobs disappearing. And so we believe that restaurants are perfectly situated to actually take those stimulus dollars and get them back out, because 95 cents to 90 cents of every dollar that we take in goes out. So if you're talking stimulus, restaurants are a great place to put that. Also, the restaurant industry has been specifically one of the hardest hit industries. I think 25% of all unemployment is from the restaurant industry. And that's because we're forced to shut down. And not only are we forced to shut down, opening up into a market where the pandemic is still raging doesn't make for a great business outlook. And so we're looking at problems for a long time. And quite frankly, all we're looking for is to make sure that we actually have capital to get restaurants back open so we can hire all our staff back and get through this period and be there once we're on the other side of this.
Gabriel, there's a narrative out there that restaurant owners like yourselves could be up and running in a big way and making all sorts of money, but you can't hire your employees back because they're making too much money on unemployment. Is that an actual challenge that you face?
No, that is not an actual challenge that we face. I would say, are there some? Sure. Is that a massive minority? Yes. I would say some of the real challenges that I'm actually facing, as I have personally been making calls to reach out to people, is people are still concerned about coming to work. There are people that still have health concerns about what is it like to work in a restaurant. There are also a lot of people that I think a narrative that's not accurately being reported on that have permanently left New York. It has come to my surprise how often we made calls out and people said, no, I left. I'm gone. New York's not for me anymore. And I think that this is something that's a reality. I think one of the largest issues that I think the government has been absolutely inept and failed at addressing over the last 4.5 months of this pandemic is this existential question about rent owed versus not owed. And the reality is, how can you sit there in one hand and say that we are not allowed and we are not permitted to be open, and then on the other hand still say that we owe rent? The reality that the purpose of our leases is absolutely been frustrated to me is black and white and clear. But yet our government still fails to address this situation. And we're 4.5 months in, and these kind of conversations are what are forcing me as a small business owner in very tough predicaments with property owners and landlords that I have, where they're pushing me up against a wall and saying, either pay me or we're terminating this lease.
It is Wednesday, the 5th of August of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. You may think that it's just a call to rid us of these meddlesome priests, but truly it is only merely, it's quite lovely. A lovely, velvety hollandaise sauce over our wonderful egg dish. Okay, some people like it on English muffin too. Some people. Well, did you know that a cheese board is only a repast of the rich? You know what? You will pry my cheese board from my cold, dead hands. No one's getting it, okay? These middle-class hands are not giving up its cheese board. Jeez. And then there's people saying, oh, well, a cheese board is just a deconstructed sandwich. Oh, God. You know, America's such a young country. So young. All right. Well, have a really good cheese board. You know, charcuterie? All right. It's excellent. It's perfect for what is known as picnic. Okay, well, we can't go to Europe anyway. We're locked down because of a fake virus. I don't quite understand how, well, I'm just being rhetorical because I understand perfectly how a certain segment of the body politic is able to convince themselves of such fantasies, nightmares. Wow. I mean, these are the same people who were whining about our precious bodily fluids being, infected by millions and millions and millions of microscopic Chinese. And now we're getting infected by millions and millions and millions of microscopic Chinese again. Don't they ever stop? Wow. It's always that. It's always the racial issue. Let's just make it racial. And I love the GOP retort whenever they're called out on it. Oh, where did it come from? Well, you know, the Spanish flu didn't come from Spain, okay? But that's where it was discovered. It had been floating around for a while before, well, some technologically advanced people decided to see what the hell was going on instead of going with their gut. So, Trump is still intimating that this virus was a weaponized weapon to be used against the American people to make Trump look bad. I don't know. Can't honor John Lewis because John Lewis didn't go to his inauguration. Well, I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that didn't go to that inauguration. Just look at the pictures. Yeah, I know he Sharpied it to make it look like, well, no one showed up for that inauguration. John Lewis wasn't the only one. There were apparently several 100,000 just common mere Americans who decided not to show up. And then the next day, what was it? 2 million? 5 million across the country? The Women's March? Yeah, he knew what was in store. And here we are. Let's just stop the election. Because if everybody votes, they're not going to vote for him. Damn right. He knows the die is cast. And no amount of help from Vlad is going to help. He's hoping that Moscow Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper, where democracy goes to die in the graveyard of the Senate, he's counting on that help. But Mitch might be in a tad little danger of losing a seat. Might. Lindsay actually looks in more dire straits. We keep our fingers crossed about Mitch. But Mitch is entrenched, all right? Let's be clear about that. He didn't get that Deripaska money because he's just a fly-by-night guy. No. He's got a plan. And he's going to see it through. And now he's got Deripaska help. Why we aren't investigating that is beyond me. But, hey, we got a lot on our table. They're saying that Mike Flynn might be coming back and being a major part of this administration again. No wonder they have to go behind closed doors to put the crown on this guy at the RNC. He meets with Vlad behind closed doors all the time. This isn't anything unusual. The problem is that we're going to find out what happened behind those closed doors at the RNC coronation from Russian media. Because they're there. They got to go in. And so it gets me back to the basket of deplorables who convince themselves the world is something entirely different than what it is. They can't see this collusion with Russia. I'm still getting it's all a Russian hoax. I'm all right. Yeah, it's all a Russian hoax. Oh, speaking of a hoax, what is this BS about Trump calling what happened in Beirut an attack? Well, it looked like one. Yeah. See, that's what happens when you go with your gut. Over 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate. Tons! McVeigh used only 2 tons of ammonium nitrate to bring down the Murrah building, and that killed 168 people. 2,760 tons of ammonium nitrate. Pictures of that blast are just, oh my God. And I hate to say this. I mean, they don't really make a big deal about it. But a few of those, I know of at least 2 professional photographers who died. And we're looking at their footage right now. I wish they would mention that. Well, I did get into a bit of a tit for tat. Tit for tat? No, I went into a tete-a-tete. Tete-a-tete. I'll get it out. Excuse me. It's morning still. I need more coffee. I got into a little tete-a-tete with some COVID deniers out here and also maggots. They seem to be the same. I got a little general post tagging me. Of course, if I tag anybody, I'll be suspended for harassment, of course. That I'm living by fear and I'm spreading fear. Because I'm telling people to wear a mask, wash their hands, and, stay inside for a little bit. Don't breathe on other people. And so I'm living by fear, apparently, because I fear getting the virus. I don't fear getting the virus. I just don't want to give the virus to anybody else. Is it fear that prevents me from doing that? I look at it as my civic responsibility. That's not motivated by fear, but by a conscious decision, in some cases, to care about another person. Of course, I'm old enough now where I don't ever even have to think about it. It's just part of, my nature? Isn't that supposed to be human nature? What were the first acts that happened in Beirut after that blast? Strangers helping strangers. Here in America, apparently, is that I don't care about a stranger. They're a stranger. If they're going to die, let them die. It's not affecting me. And then when it does, they're the first ones to be out there whining, I have this terrible thing, and now we have to have a GoFundMe campaign to stop this terrible disease, because they finally got it. Sympathy and empathy are entirely two different things. Empathy is, having a thought for a person and their predicament before it happens to you. Sympathy is when you sympathize with another person because it's happened to you. So maybe we need a little bit more empathy. Maybe. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, the restaurant industry is fighting for survival during the pandemic, and you can rest assured your favorite restaurant is probably going to close, and that is not a good thing. A entirely different model has to be created now. The restaurant idea was to, get a few people in and get them close, but not too close. But, pack them in. Now we have to figure something else out. And I have some ideas, and there's been some great ideas coming from, engineers and architects over in Europe. Fancy that. A little tidbit of information here locally. A local bar here called the Jam and Salmon on Rogue River Highway lost their liquor license because over the weekend they hosted a party of about 200 and some odd people, unmasked on top of each other. And the county cops couldn't stop it, along with the city cops, so they called in the OLC and they came in and they shut them down. I don't know why the cops couldn't. Well, you need the OLC because they're part of the process. So now we have several hundred unmasked patrons walking around my little area, and we've seen another massive spike in infections in Jackson County, and we'll get into that during the weather report. On the rest of the menu, here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the Iowa governor says schools are defying the law if they follow health guidelines. Yeah, that's where we're at now. The GOP is entirely a Trump death cult. In this reporter's opinion, well, that's a rhetorical question now, isn't it? The dirty Republican plan to cut the census short is potentially illegal. But I'm sure Bill Barr has an OLC memo that says it's perfectly fine when there's a guy that's been installed by a hostile foreign power in the Oval Office. It doesn't apply to him. And high-flying Virgin Atlantic filed for U.S. bankruptcy protection. Oh, I guess they're going to be grounded. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Malaysia police raided the office of Al Jazeera after a documentary about badly treated undocumented migrants enraged the government. Sounds familiar. And Jordanian police clashed with protesters over a crackdown on the Teachers Union. The Teachers Union! All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page is our Patreon button, and if you could make a recurring pledge, if you could pledge a recurring donation, Patreonage to Netroots Radio, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink? We need a few more of you to do that, and thank you to those who have. Your generosity is allowing us to fulfill our civic duty, as I've mentioned before, and I'll keep mentioning it because we could have a fund drive like Pacifica does that lasts for months, if not years. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we are able to keep this little powerhouse of resistance resisting because of your generosity, and truth be told, we need more of you, because in spite of the grave injustices happening out there in the world, the rents just keep going up. You know, have you seen what it costs to buy a dozen eggs now? My gosh. Anyway, thank you for your generosity, and we will continue resisting. We've been doing it for almost 10 years now. Wow, time flies. Of 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio. Surgeries don't stop us. I've had 2 surgeries, knee surgery and a shoulder surgery. Oh my God! I even had cellulitis that put me into ICU, and we still kept going. How do we do it? Well, because of a deep sense of duty to our country. The show must go on, and your generosity, and we thank you for that. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more, as well as Kelly, and we thank them both for all of the stalwart work that they do. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam because I'm a control freak. My. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. So if you follow me at Justice Putnam, well, then you'll get the links to the show notes. Indeed. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And the most important part of this spiel, besides the constant plea for funds, is to pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay. Before I jump into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Wow, we had some elections across the country, and it seems like some of them turned out pretty good for the blue side. And there's some that, I don't know, on the surface look like it was okay, but then you dig a little bit deeper and you go, oops, we had that one thing. But look at all these weird QAnon maggots that are going to be running in the general. Eek. Kind of scary when you think about it. Scary only that they got that far. Jeez. Well, there's that toxic third I always talk about, and they seem to have an outsized influence. Not because of numbers, by the way, because they're just a third. And they've always been around. But generally, we've been able to keep them in the corner. Use a little bit of antibacterial, antiviral, civic antiseptics. And we were able to, keep them back in the woodwork. Now they're out of the woodwork. So we got to clean this place up, scrub all the rust off, and that takes some elbow grease, okay? We can't just sit back on our laurels and just tweet it in. Nope, we actually have to go out there and scrub the hull of the ship of state. Let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it's out of the American Independent by Dan Desai-Martin. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds declared that schools following the advice of health officials and holding online-only classes this fall are breaking the law. I guess she's going to send in federal troops to make sure they don't use a computer to teach. I want to be very clear, Reynolds said at a Tuesday press conference. Schools that choose not to return to school for at least 50% in-person instruction are not defying me. They are defying the law. What is it about these GOP people when they talk about the law they actually mean about them? According to guidance issued by Reynolds' office last Thursday, schools must conduct most instruction in person unless the local coronavirus test rate is at least 15% and the school has an absentee rate topping 10%. If that happens, they may request a waiver from the state to conduct all classes online. Oh, can we please keep our children safe? No, you can't. Reynolds' statement came one day after two school boards in the state voted to defy her order. And she's going to show them. Ah, you like your little kitties, do ya? The board made the original request due to high community spread of the virus and in consideration of information and guidance provided by local public health officials. Steve Bass, district superintendent, wrote in a letter to parents on Monday night after the board voted unanimously to defy the governor, and the state denied the waiver this Monday. The district requested the waiver extension because the community is no safer now than it was 3 weeks ago, Bass stated, and the board could not, in good conscience, send students and staff back into small spaces for long periods of time. But the governor says, "Are you defying my order?" "Yeah, I think it stinks." "I think you mean order." "I know, but are you defying my order?" "Yes, we are, because we want to keep our children safe." So the governor responded to both districts this week by threatening administrators and students alike with repercussions. Administrators could face licensure discipline if they don't follow the governor's orders, Reynolds said. And the days of online learning do not count toward instructional time for students, the Des Moines Register reported, meaning they don't get credit for college if you learn online. Wow. Wait until I tell Heald. Is Heald still around? The governor did not threaten to withhold funding from the districts that defied her, though. But I think that's in line. I think that's probably like another little poker chip she's going to have. Reynolds became the third Republican governor in less than a week to dismiss the advice of local health officials in regard to opening schools. Texas Governor Greg Abbott declared that the authority to decide when the school year will begin lies with local school boards, not health departments. His announcement came after health officials in 16 jurisdictions attempted to close schools due to concerns over the pandemic. And Maryland's Governor Larry Hogan followed suit, overturning a decision by county health officials to close all schools. Hogan said that private and religious schools should be free to make their own decisions. Yeah, when you're in a cult, you have to make the decision about whether you just want to kill yourselves or spread your biological weapons out there among the community. Coronavirus outbreaks have cropped up in some places, even though the academic year has just begun. One school in Indiana closed just days after classes started because of positive tests, and another school was forced to quarantine nearly 50 students after they were exposed to the virus. Nationwide, there have been more than 5 million confirmed cases of coronavirus, and at least 157,000 people have died. next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is Out of Salon by Igor Durish. The Census Bureau revealed on Monday that it will stop collecting data 1 month earlier than planned as it works to exclude undocumented immigrants from congressional apportionment under Trump's legally dubious order. The agency said earlier this year that it would need more time to complete the decennial count because of the pandemic. Census Bureau Director Stephen Dillingham now says the data will be delivered to Trump by the end of the year instead of next spring, at which time presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden may be in power. Well, we can only hope, and hope means taking a lot of work. Only about 63% of the country's estimated 120 million households have responded to the census. The move particularly threatens to impact historically undercounted groups such as people of color, immigrants, and rural residents. You know, white people. Come on, white people, get on it. Dillingham said in a Monday statement that the Bureau will end its field data collection and counting responses via phone, mail, or online by September 30th. He also said the Bureau continues to work on meeting the requirements of 2 orders issued by Trump. A July 2019 executive order instructing government agencies to report data on undocumented immigrants for the purpose of excluding them from census data used by the states to draft legislative maps, and a presidential memorandum issued last month instructing the Census Bureau to exclude undocumented immigrants from congressional apportionment. A team of experts are examining methodologies and options to be employed for this purpose, Dillingham said. Oh, really? You mean you're trying to figure out how to skirt the law? During a House hearing last week, Dillingham repeatedly refused to say whether the Bureau stood by its original request for an extension. The Democratic-led House already voted to approve an extension, but a proposal from Senate Republicans does not include one because that's the graveyard. That's where democracy goes to die. Ask the Grim Reaper. He'll tell you. The move is expected to boost Republican election prospects in the House of Representatives. An analysis by the University of Virginia Center for Politics found that, among others, California would lose 2 seats and New Jersey would lose 1 seat. Meanwhile, states like Alabama and Ohio would gain 1 seat each. Trump claimed in the memorandum in June that the Constitution, quote, has never been understood to include in the apportionment base every individual physically present within a state's boundaries at the time of the census. Instead, the term persons in each state has been interpreted to mean that only the inhabitants of each state should be included. Determining which persons should be considered inhabitants for the purpose of apportionment requires the exercise of judgment. No, it doesn't. This guy doesn't know diddly about the Constitution. The only thing he knows about the Constitution is what Vlad has taught him, please. Democrats and advocacy groups quickly challenged the order in court, arguing that the Constitution does not allow the census to count some people but not others. Under the 14th Amendment, House seats are to be divided among the states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, including Indians not taxed. That means everybody, even the people that we genocided who are left. You got to count them too. Former Attorney General Eric Holder, who now heads the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, said the order clearly violated the Constitution. This latest scheme is nothing more than a partisan attempt at manipulating the census to benefit Trump's allies. But it plainly violates the U.S. Constitution and federal laws and cannot stand, he told Politico. The memo was issued after the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration from adding a citizenship question to the census, though the president had tried to go around the court decision by using his executive powers. Administration officials said at the time that citizenship data could be used to draw legislative maps that would likely shift power from more densely populated cities to rural areas, because unoccupied land has much more of a voice than actual people, especially when they're people of color. New York Census Director Julie Menon said Trump's memorandum was nothing but a disgusting power grab from an administration hell-bent on preserving its fleeting political power at all costs. From day one, it has been abundantly clear that Donald Trump is going to try everything possible to stop New Yorkers, and I might add in this reporter's opinion everybody else in America, from filling out the census, and now, amid a global pandemic that severely impacted outreach, they are straight up trying to steal it. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, is by anonymous worker bees from the Associated Press. Virgin Atlantic, the airline founded by British businessman Richard Branson, filed for protection in U.S. bankruptcy court as it tries to survive the virus pandemic that is hammering the airline industry. The airline made the Chapter 15 filing in U.S. federal bankruptcy court in New York after a proceeding in the U.K. A spokeswoman for Virgin Atlantic said the bankruptcy filing is part of a court process in the United Kingdom to carry out a restructuring plan that the airline announced last month. The process is supported by a majority of the airline's creditors, and the company hopes to emerge from the process in September, she said. A Virgin Atlantic lawyer said in a court filing that the company needs an order from a U.S. court to make the terms of the restructuring apply in the U.S. The airline is primarily a long-haul operator, including flights between the U.K. and the U.S. It stopped flying in April due to the pandemic and only resumed flights in July. It closed a base at London's Gatwick Airport and cut about 3,500 jobs. Branson appealed to the British government for financial help earlier this year, even saying he would pledge his Caribbean island resort as collateral for a loan, but was rebuffed. Yeah, who's going to go to Caribbean during a pandemic? I mean, come on. Last month, Virgin Atlantic announced that it had put together a deal to raise £1.2 billion, which is nearly $1.6 billion at the current exchange rate, from private sources, including £200 million from Branson's Virgin Group. Atlanta-based Delta Airlines, which owns 49.99999% of the airline, agreed to defer payments it was owed, and hedge fund Davidson Kepner agreed to lend Virgin Atlantic £170 million. Virgin Atlantic also delayed the deliveries of Airbus jets. Airlines have been slammed by the coronavirus outbreak that has led to travel restrictions and left many people afraid to fly. Branson founded and still holds a 10% stake in Virgin Australia, which has announced plans to shed a third of its workforce. as it scales back operations as part of its restructuring. The airline, Australia's second-largest carrier, sought bankruptcy protection, and its administrator, Deloitte, has entered into a binding agreement to sell the airline to Boston-based investment firm Bain Capital. Well, it looks to me that Mitt Romney will find this bankruptcy restructuring to be just the right height. All right, that brings us to our break. Enough of this faux British accent. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Hank's back at the helm. A trend has been emerging over the years with respect to Tom Hanks' heroes. None are ever anointed or have special powers or are answering a call of destiny. They are, rather, average men rising to an occasion. Think Chesley Sullenberger, the hero pilot in Sully, or his portrayal of Captain Phillips dealing with Somali pirates. The new World War II action film Greyhound finds Hanks back on the high seas portraying Commander Ernest Krause in a Hanks-written screenplay from C.S. Forester's 1955 novel The Good Shepherd. Set in the under-remembered Battle of the Atlantic, where more Allied service people died than on D-Day and its immediate aftermath, Commander Krause is embarking on his first wartime command, escorting a convoy of merchant ships from the U.S. to Liverpool through a gauntlet of German U-boats in the North Atlantic. The film's action occurs in what the crew calls the Black Pit, an approximately 3-day stretch of ocean travel where the ships are out of range of land-based air cover, and action is what we get. Though there's less than 90 minutes of it, it is riveting as the convoy, not always successfully, plays cat and mouse with the U-boats. From the action emerges an understated character study of Commander Krause, who remains awake and on duty through the whole ordeal. We see him call for his slippers after his Navy-issued shoes turn his feet bloody. We see him take time to say grace before snacks, even under near-battle conditions. Despite at least a couple of familiar faces amongst the crew, though, director Aaron Schneider gives us no backstory on their characters, which feels more like a decision than an oversight. That decision, clearly, being to keep Greyhound a stark white-knuckle ride, during which a good man answers the call of duty. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1993. That was the day that the Family Medical Leave Act went into effect. Union members worked hard to support this legislation, testifying before Congress and holding rallies. It was an uphill battle to pass the bill. Starting in 1984, family medical leave was brought before Congress. Year after year, the bill failed to win enough votes. In 1991, it finally passed Congress, but was vetoed by President George H.W. Bush. He vetoed it again the following year. Then, in February of 1992, newly elected President Bill Clinton signed the FMLA into law. It guaranteed that most employers with 50 or more workers must give their employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for a serious health condition for themselves, their spouse, parent, or child. In his speech signing the act, President Bill Clinton declared, quote, "This bill will strengthen our families, and I believe it will strengthen our businesses and our economy as well." He went on to say, "I know that men and women are more productive when they are sure they won't lose their jobs because they're trying to be good parents, good children. Our businesses should not lose the services of these dedicated Americans. And over the long run, the lessons of the most productive companies in the world, here at home and around the world, are that those who put their people first are those who will triumph in the global economy." He said that family and medical leave is a matter of pure common sense and a matter of common decency. It will provide Americans what they need most, peace of mind. Never again will parents have to fear losing their jobs because of their families. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
A huge explosion killed at least 100 people and injured more than 4,000 near the port of the Lebanese capital, Beirut, on Tuesday, with the death toll expected to rise precipitously. Investigators reported that the source of the explosion was a fire at a warehouse where over 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate, which is used to make fertilizer and bombs, was being stored. By comparison, the bomb that took down the federal building in Oklahoma City in the early 90s was 2 tons. It's still unclear exactly what caused the explosion. There's no indication that it was an attack. Beirut's governor said it caused up to $5 billion in damage, but at this point, the full extent isn't yet known. Countries around the world have offered condolences and pledged aid for what the Lebanese Red Cross is calling an unprecedented and very large disaster. Yet the orange idiot occupying the Oval Office suggested in his farce of a daily coronavirus press briefing on Tuesday that it was an attack because, quote, "it would seem like it."
The United States stands ready to assist Lebanon. We have a very good relationship with the people of Lebanon, and we will be there to help. It looks like a terrible attack.
I just want to follow up before I ask a coronavirus question on Lebanon. You called this an attack. Are you confident that this was an attack and not an accident?
Well, it would seem like it.
The United States recorded nearly 1,400 new coronavirus fatalities on Tuesday, bringing the nationwide death toll to just under 157,000. The same day, we got to hear the entirety of Trump's mind-blowing interview with Axios' Jonathan Swan. We knew Trump lacked empathy, but his response when asked about the death toll just about broke the internet.
I think it's under control. I'll tell you what.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing everything we can. It's under control as much as you can control it. This is a horrible plague that beset us.
It is what it is?
It is what it is.
Tropical storm Isaias is gone, but only after pushing up the East Coast on Tuesday, spawning tornadoes and killing at least 6 people. The storm made landfall in southeastern North Carolina as a hurricane. Then it moved through Virginia, Maryland, and into the Northeast, where it threatened parts of Philadelphia with flash floods and prompted New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio to issue a tornado warning. The downgraded storm left more than 2 million homes and businesses without power from South Carolina to Connecticut. So it's still primary season, and Tuesday was another big primary day with even bigger ramifications. In this case, it's seismic, as progressive challenger Cori Bush defeated 20-year incumbent Republican Congressman William Lacey Clay in the Democratic primary for Missouri's 1st congressional district. Many are saying she will become the next member of the squad. Bush rose to prominence during the Ferguson protests in 2014 over the police killing of black teenager Michael Brown. Missouri voters also approved expanding Medicaid to about 230,000 low-income residents. The vote wasn't even close, 53 to 47%. Missouri is the 6th red state to expand Medicaid, and the 2nd to do so during this coronavirus pandemic. In Kansas, the establishment Republican candidate, Congressman Roger Marshall, defeated former Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach in the Republican Senate primary. Republicans had worried that nominating Kobach would make it harder to hold on to the seat being vacated by Senator Pat Roberts, who's retiring. In another complete 180, Trump on Tuesday sent out a tweet encouraging Floridians to vote by mail. Huh? Whether you call it vote by mail or absentee voting, in Florida the election system is safe and secure. Tried and true. Florida's election system has been cleaned up. What? It was just the day before Trump had threatened to block Nevada's plan to send mail-in ballots to voters due to the coronavirus crisis. But the nation's most prolific liar has claimed without evidence in recent weeks that mail-in voting would result in fraud and huge delays. So when asked at his commandeered TV time Tuesday why only Florida, Trump offered this ridiculous and, yes, hyper-partisan response.
Florida's got a great Republican governor, and it had a great Republican governor. It's got Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, two great governors. And over a long period of time, they've been able to get the absentee ballots done extremely professionally. Florida is different from other states. I mean, in Nevada, where you have a governor, he said, let's just send out millions of ballots, and the post office cannot be prepared. I haven't spoken to the post office about it, but I don't know how they could possibly be prepared. Florida has been working on this for years.
It's that time of year again. Congress is scheduled to take off for their regularly scheduled August recess at the end of this week. But wait, there's still that new coronavirus relief package in the works. The White House and congressional negotiators are aiming to come to an agreement by Friday, paving the way for a vote next week. We'll see. Reports are that the two sides are still worlds apart. And finally, since there's still no national testing program or even a strategy for COVID-19, 7 governors have formed a first-of-its-kind purchasing agreement they hope can make rapid detection tests more accessible. Governors from Maryland, Virginia, Michigan, Ohio, Louisiana, Massachusetts, and North Carolina from both parties said on Tuesday that additional states and cities may join, and that talks have begun with one of the 2 companies approved by the FDA to sell point-of-care antigen tests that can detect the virus in less than 30 minutes. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Expected to be a bit cooler today, only topping out about 87 to 88. Plenty of sunshine, a stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with the day after a full moon, or is it the night? Lows near 60, and winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy tomorrow with highs only around 80, with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the Southern Oregon region of Southern Oregon has now spiked to 411. 411, with one confirmed deceased. But we know that many more have been deceased. They're just not counting them at the moment. Grass pollen is rated as moderate right outside the mothership. The air quality index for the region is good at 27 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high at 8. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.96 inches. Visibility is down to 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 78 and sunny. Paris is 89 and sunny with a heat advisory. Rome is 85 and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm, electrical storm advisory that could knock out electrical grids around the areas. Kyiv is 90 degrees and fair. Kabul is 84 and fair. Hong Kong is 75 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 82 degrees and fair. Sydney, Australia is 51 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 and cloudy with a fog advisory. And New York is 82 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, with apparently a lot of trees blown down because of a hurricane. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Malaysian police raided the offices of news broadcaster Al Jazeera and 2 local TV stations, seizing computers as part of an investigation into a documentary on undocumented migrants that enraged the government. Al Jazeera, a Qatari state-owned broadcaster, said in a statement that police seized 2 computers during the raid, which it called a troubling escalation in a government crackdown on media freedom. It urged Malaysian authorities to cease the criminal investigation. Police opened an investigation last month into the Al Jazeera documentary on the treatment of undocumented migrants after officials complained it was inaccurate and biased. 7 Al Jazeera staff members have been grilled by police as part of the probe for alleged sedition, defamation, and violating the Communications and Multimedia Act.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Suleiman Al-Khalidi of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Jordanian security forces used tear gas to disperse stone-throwing demonstrators it blamed for disrupting public services during a protest demanding the release of leaders of the opposition-run teachers' union. A government source said 7 security forces were injured in the protest in the southern city of Karak, with violence breaking out for the first time in an escalating crisis between the authorities and the union that has become a leading source of dissent. Well, Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.